Hey there guys, so in this video just going over how to grow a big back. I enjoy making these videos, get asked a fair bit, so yeah, just happy to put the content out there. Now I like to kick it off with pull-ups simply because they work the entirety of the back really quite well. They're also a very good general strength test to see where you are relative to your body weight, and there's something about pull-ups as opposed to lat pull downs which just hits a lot better. Could be the fact that it's a open chain versus closed chain movement, but yeah, I prefer doing the pull-ups. Sets and reps, look, normally 4 sets of 10, sometimes up to 15. It really depends what I'm trying to achieve. Break times 4 to 5 minutes. Now for me, normally the first rep of the first set or two is a little bit rubbish. It just takes a little bit for me to get into it. But one of the biggest tips I'd probably give for pull-ups is concentrate on trying to pull your elbows down towards your hips as opposed to just trying to pull yourself up. If you initiate the pull-up using your lats and your back as opposed to your biceps, you're going to feel it a lot more in your back. And at the end of the day, if you're trying to grow a bigger back, this is, a tip or a cue, whatever you want to call it, that it's going to make quite a substantial difference. The other thing that I'd concentrate on with, pull-ups and the rest of it outside of, trying to grow a big back is just some general arm work, because arms really do get taxed on this movement. But if you can get that down pat, you'll find the quality of your pull-ups is going to be a lot better. Again, if you're not strong enough to do pull-ups, you can swap it for the assisted chins machine, or you could try doing pull-ups with a band. If both of those aren't an option wherever you're training, then yeah, look, go for the lat pull down, as it's still a decent movement, but the end goal is to be able to work your way to being able to do pull-ups, simply because it just works the back in a way and in a manner that just really does give you a really good physique. Something new that I've started adding to my training, I was never a big one for deadlifts, simply because I squatted heavy, and just squats and deads in the same week was just too much for the lower back. But playing around with the trap bar deadlifts, I do find that hits my mid and lower back quite well without being overbearing on it. So I can still get away with my squats, I still get quality of life afterwards because my lower back's not too exhausted. I find this also hits my traps and my lats to a greater extent because my hands are off to the side. They're not, against my shins. So, yeah, there's a lot more going on in terms of total back development, I find, with the trap bar deadlift as opposed to the traditional. Again, you could vary where you wanted to put your hands. If you're sticking with traditional deadlifts, you could put your hands out a lot further and make them more like a snatch grip deadlift. But it depends if it's going to really hit your lower back. At the end of the day, your spinal erectors are still part of the equation, and they're getting worked while I'm doing this. But if you want to grow a really big back, you can't afford to get injured. And that's, quite a self-explanatory, point. The more total volume I've also found for back, spread over a week, not necessarily just in one session, also makes a big difference. Sets and reps for these, I'm keeping it 4 sets of 10. I'll hit one heavier top set, and then I'll drop the weight back. The 10 reps for me, it works well. I don't want to chase really high reps on this, again, because the lower back is going to be a limiting factor, or your grip depending on where you're at. But yeah, a movement that I really quite like as something additional as well. It hits a fair bit of the legs. So all round, it's a good strength builder. It's going to help really build your physique. So definitely, rate it. Another exercise related to back, and just to finish off how the back looks as a whole, is the shrug. So this, just a short range of motion, I'm shrugging up. For me, because I compete in powerlifting, the way that I do shrugs is a little bit different to others. For me, I like to retract my scapula because that's the same position I'm going to be in when I bench press. So I want to be, mindful of that position, because, if I can keep my scapula locked in position, I'm going to keep my shoulders safe during bench press. So that's the way that I shrug. I pull my scapula back. Other people, they prefer to let their arms really hang and they're going for a longer range of motion. For me, I prefer the retracted position, and then I just go higher rep in general. I'm not trying to do the reps as fast as possible, but I just found with a shorter range of motion and moving at a good pace, I was able to feel the traps really work, especially that upper portion. And if you can zone in on what you're training and you can actually feel the muscle tissue, contract and move the way it should, there is a very high, probability that what you're doing is going to be productive to the end result that you're chasing. So for me, my goal was to really work my traps, especially that upper portion. So then, I had better scapular stability, but as a whole, it also just gave me a bigger back, which is going to be an advantage, just more total mass, more stable on the bench press, and I'm able to keep my shoulders, healthy because they're not being compromised. They're not, as unstable as, someone else's shoulders would be due to a lack of mass in that area. But rep wise, I like to chase really high reps with this, anywhere up to 50 reps. I just find that for me that works really quite well. Other people, they tend to go with really heavy shrugs down around the 5-6 rep mark. For me, I've never really found that has worked well. I've always found if I could actually feel the muscle contracting and doing what it needed, I got better results. And because I compete in powerlifting as well, I'm going to be doing some heavy deadlifts and squats and other things where, just the sheer weight gets the job done. Versus this, it's nice actually being able to feel the muscles work. And another thing, I'd say with that is, you could do all 4 sets in one session, or you could spread it out over the week. I've played around with both. I found spreading it out, doing a set or 2 each day over the total week, I actually ended up with better total grip strength as an end result. But it was just nice to have, more total blood in the area. My upper back didn't feel as stiff in general, especially after heavy training sessions, because, you're shrugging, you're moving, your scapula are moving, you're getting more total blood flow into that area. I'm not going to say it's a mobility exercise in that regard. I can't quite class it as active recovery, but it is definitely something that's a contributing factor to just better mobility in general and better recovery. And then lastly, if you want to grow a big back, throw in some form of rows. It just works a different angle. Depending on, you could do, I'm doing mine with a stone because, I like mucking around with the natural stone lifting and a little bit of the strongman stuff. So I find this has carryover to that. Otherwise, barbell rows are a really good alternative, especially if your lower back's not too cooked from the deadlifts. But otherwise, dumbbell rows work well. Again, with rows, they're an exercise where I like to chase that 8 to 10 rep mark. Generally, 5 minutes between sets I find works well because I'm after the quality of the working set, as opposed to just chasing, really, really high volume in a training session. So for me, rows, 4 sets works well at that 8 to 10 mark. Another cue, again, very similar to the pull-ups, concentrate on pulling from your elbows. Think of, a cable on the back of your elbow and, rowing from there. You want to initiate the movement with your back as opposed to your bicep. So, that's just a brief run through. Pick 2 exercises, do them each session or, each back session, and then swap them over for the next back session. Hit like and subscribe.